don't stop. Cause you can't, you want. You don't stop. Cause you can't, you want. You don't stop.
My beat coming down for sure.
I got the brand new dude. You gotta change like you. I'm on like that the time. Yeah, Mr. Zuzu, I'm a newlywed. I'm not a divorcee. And everything I do is funky like Lee Dorsey. Let's take it on the melon. 1, 2, 3. If you wanna go round and come see me, I got the savoir-faire with the unique profit. I keep it on and on. It's never quit the time. This ain't new business. Now I go. Never rock the mic with the pantyhose and strap on my ear. I'm ready to go.
Oh, well, hello everybody. We hope that you're joining us here on Ed Video's Open Circuit on Thursday, April 16th, 2020. That intro there was something a little different. That was a song that just dropped a few days ago by my good friend and our guest last week on our second show, Nick Denboer, also goes by Smearballs, put out an album on Bandcamp, and it's called Flustercuck. And that track was called Unsure Shot. Thought it was a really sweet remix of the Beastie Boys song. And I had to come up with a new plan for the music today. As you may notice, generally there's someone right here. She's very adorable. She's 9 years old, and her name is Edie, and she's my daughter. But unfortunately, she couldn't make it today. She had some schoolwork to do, some online schoolwork. That's okay. It's a big commitment to this show, and she's here. She's been here every day so far, and she'll be here every day in the future, I'm sure. But if she needs to take a day off, that is fine. She's got her own life as well. So hope everybody has been enjoying the episodes of Open Circus. Is something we're trying to do here at Ed Video because we have the equipment and we know a lot of artists, and a lot of artists have some great stories to talk about and some great work to show that we can show online. We're just trying to figure it out every day, make it a little bit better. Also, because Edie's not here today, I don't have her beautiful drawings for my backdrop, so I've just set up something a little different, just some graphics to play. But I think starting tomorrow or Monday, we just haven't got around to it yet. We're going to set up a setup with Resolume Arena so Edie can do live video mixing of her animations that she makes using After Effects. So get the backdrop a little more animated, a little more psychedelic, and a little bit more fun as well. We have a great episode coming up here today. If you're watching live on YouTube, feel free to comment or ask questions. Our guest today is José Andrés Mora, who's waiting in the wings, ready to chat with us. But as we do, let's take a look at. Here he is. Look what he's doing in that photo I just stole from his Instagram. He's drying off a piece of lettuce with a hairdryer. That's the kind of guy he is. Can't wait to talk to him. When I thought about having this show, he's one of the first people that popped into my mind who would be an excellent guest, because I think you're going to be blown away by some of his video installation work. He's really talented, really has his own sensibility of it, and really perseveres to do some things that are almost impossible to do. But first we'll talk a little bit about who's coming up. Got a few guests confirmed. Tomorrow, Ivana Dizdar joining us. Got 2 or 3 of her amazing videos we're going to show. They're just hilarious. They're really cutting into what the contemporary art scene. Great satires and very high production. 420 on Monday, we're talking to Tasman Richardson. Got some great examples of his work from shows in the past, and really wanting to get into it about his ideas about video itself, because he's kind of a genius about how to think about video in a very whole way of thinking about the medium. April 21st, the Great Orbacks joining us here to talk about some of his recent science for kids projects, but also just to get into it about his very fascinating history of what he's done in circus at the University of Guelph as a professor and with some new projects. Next day, Amy Lockhart joining us live from Chicago, talking about her incredible animations and artwork and what she's been up to. Fez Stenton the next day on April 23rd, joining us from Toronto, talking about his incredible video work and events. Then, special guest all the way from Chiapas, Mexico, Alejandro Garcia Contreras on April 27th, giving us a little tour of his residency there and seeing some of his incredible work. Very excited to talk to Alejandro. And then May 1st, Versa Visuals. Versa, local AV act, going to talk about what they do, how they do it. Very excited to talk to them. A few other guests in the hopper too. Just figuring out exact dates, and we'll be announcing shortly as soon as we figure that one out. So I hope everyone's enjoying the show. If you're tuning in, just if you have any questions for our guest today, and I think you might. His name is Jose, and we're about to go live with Jose. Let's take a look if he is there. Oh, there he is. There he is. Can you see and hear me, Jose? Oh, I'm not getting your audio. What's going on here? Oh, I don't hear you. Yeah, very interesting. This is an adventure in everything because it's all live. Anything can happen. And I was with Jose just 10 minutes ago, and it was all working, and now it doesn't. Let me see here. No. Let me see. Okay, hold on, everybody. Let's see what we can figure out here with Jose. Maybe Jose, I'm gonna hang up on you and call you back, okay? Because it worked last time. Maybe we've just timed out. Okay, maybe Facebook. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg's watching. And do you hear that? I hear that. So I got signal from my laptop. We'll just be back shortly with Jose, and we're going to talk about things like this, about troubleshooting video problems. Okay, I see you. Can I hear you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You are back. Look at that. This is a very suiting way to start the show, perhaps, because this is one of the things I want to talk to you about is the headaches of video technology and how we work through things like that. So let's just start easy. How you doing, Jose?
I'm good. I was laughing a lot when you brought up that video of me drawing lettuce, which I forgot about. Pretty funny, but I'm good. Just trying to adjust to getting things done in a new setting, especially since I was doing a master's program up until very recently, and we got kicked out of our studios for obvious reasons. And so it's like trying to take it day by day, but I'm good.
That's good. I think maybe potentially for you that could be a bigger issue than some other students because you work with a lot of technology. You need space. You need all these things that maybe other people could adapt to the kitchen table a little easier. So what have you been doing in the last month or so?
We had a little bit of a head start, and so a lot of us were able to pull out as many things as possible. I've been trying to get a few, basically mainly one piece finished that I started before everything happened. It's sort of a work that involves using two synchronized projectors and but actually a little more specific, two projectors that are rotating side by side, and the movements have to be synchronized. So figuring out a little bit of the electronics for that, and I was lucky, very lucky that I was able to get some gears 3D, not 3D printed, sorry, laser cut before I finished. So I'm actually able to like do all the movement stuff for it. So I've been working on that stuff, and to be honest, just like also just like um, paying attention to my houseplants, cooking, going for walks. That's about it.
Well, that's still some pretty good stuff. Maybe artists are good at adapting to changes because they're creative and they know how to work with what they got, and whatever they can figure out to stay busy, stay sane, stay productive. That's really great. Um, I'm gonna cut to a video right now that's really short for our viewers, but I think it's very suiting. It's an older video that Jose made, and like before, don't be concerned if there's no audio because on purpose there's no audio. All right, we'll be back with Jose in about 20 seconds. Okay, that was it. I think that's a pretty funny way to start this show with you, Jose, because it's sort of about talking heads. Tell us a little bit about that video. It's called Mouthpiece.
Yeah, so Mouthpiece was a work that I did. Actually, I think it was like the first thing I made out of school as soon as I finished school in NASCA in 2013. I had just started to become a little bit more interested in um, uh, I guess it very broadly interested in language, but also just interested in like conventions of how we are just how we what are some of the markers we expect for other people when we communicate with them in a sort of a very generalized way. And so I thought it would be interesting to create a video in which only the body language would be apparent from that conversation between two people. And so a very kind of a like back then you could do animations with Photoshop. I was just learning how to do stuff. So I was Photoshop like literally animating using Photoshop. You have stitching little by little like grabs from moments in the video where the speakers have their mouths closed, and I just created. I think it was like a total of like 1 minute animation of the two people speaking to each other, with this sort of like mask stitch on their face that made it look as though they weren't moving their mouths. And so you have this sort of back and forth of two people just like kind of just like moving their heads back and forth, and I think I was just like thinking about like how in sort of these sort of like this debate setting between two sort of like this kind of like dialect something like between like two sides or whatever, but like being totally grossed out by both opinions. Where I mean, this is like Alex Jones was already kind of a nut job at that point, like by 2013, but he was like maybe not so big of a nut job, but like he was like obviously like just totally abrasive and unpleasant to listen to, but then like this other guy, Pierce, oh my god, what's his name? That's good. Pierce something over here. He this equally as like kind of just unconvincing or unappealing, I should say. So
Right.
I didn't shut them both up.
Well, I think it's pretty hilarious. Before we show some of your more current work, just tell our viewers a little bit about like how you got into art. Like, tell us a little bit, maybe if you have some early memories that kind of nudged you towards it, or how did you get into it, Jose?
Into art making.
Yeah.
I I mean, I started making. I mean, I think I started getting into art stuff like fairly young, but I never really thought that I was into art stuff. Like I was working with. Started like my brother bought me oh no, he downloaded a pirated version of what back then was Macromedia Flash before I got bought by Adobe. Uh, and he downloaded it for me, and he was like, "Oh, you want to learn how to animate?" Because I used to play a lot of video games, and I was like, "Oh, I want to learn how to animate." And this was like also the time of like Albino Black Sheep and um, what's the other one? Battlegrounds is it called? I can't remember. Like it was like these platforms for Flash-based games that I was really into.
Okay.
And so I started learning like to do that stuff when I was like 12 or 13 with this pirated version of Adobe and a book. And never really thought about it as art stuff. Like I just kept like doing stuff like I don't know, like I remember like one of the things that I used to like to do is because we have like one computer. I liked creating like a flash animation that would play at full screen, but it was just like a copy of the desktop, and I just like animated like icons so like they would do weird shit. So like when somebody would come to use the computer, um, they would look like it was just in the desktop, but it was actually a flash animation. So it was like this like prank I would play on my family, and I just like sit there and watch them like struggle with the computer. Uh, I think that's kind of fun now. I was like, yeah, that sounds like not so different from what I do now. But yeah, I don't know. I think I started taking it a little bit more seriously when I was maybe in grade 9. I started doing black and white photography. My parents were always really supportive of me, which I'm pretty lucky for. I think they were always like I told them that I wanted to learn. I wanted to be an artist, and they were like, oh, "Okay, well, like you don't draw or paint, so why don't you learn photography?" So they like enrolled me in this photography course, which ended up being really great because I ended up really enjoying just working in a dark room. Got started like without knowing, I think I was just like really interested in like very technical processes, I guess. And so that's how I kind of got started in that, and then I just I kept enrolling in a lot of like extracurricular classes when I was in high school. I was just always surrounded by really nice opportunities, and I was just lucky to like be able to like take advantage of those opportunities when I was young, and never really realized how lucky I was until like later. Like, oh shit, I got to like learn how to do printmaking before I went to university. Like,
Well, that's actually really fascinating. That you kind of didn't come to art from drawing and painting background. I think that's quite unusual, actually. That you kind of started right away with like a tech bent to the whole thing. It's very funny, actually. Also, you mentioned what you did because I did the same thing in grade 9 when I took this is in the 90s, early 90s, and took a computer course in high school, and we did basic programming. And one of the things that it kind of occurred to me to do is make a program that mimicked the login page and just kept spitting out errors. So I'd like load that onto all the other computers before class and just watch everyone struggle and try not to burst out laughing.
oh my god, that was
And then I
amazing.
tried so hard to figure out how to record their passwords too, but I couldn't get that in the basic programming to
Oh my god,
figure
you're
that
gonna
out.
make a keystroke recorder or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
whoa,
exactly. Yeah, I
back in the making.
had the hacking stuff back then, but I just didn't put in the work to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's super interesting. Let's take a look at some of your newer work. This is stuff I'm really excited to show the viewers, and we can just talk while we play it as well. Um, I'm just gonna take a look. Hopefully this works. Okay, so we're looking at the first piece I ever saw by you, and it's called "Reoccurring Sun." I saw this at, I think it was at boarding house, and it really caught my eye. And I thought, wow, like what is this? Who made this? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the work is it kind of came out of a desire for like I've always been really interested in creating uh, Let's backtrack a little bit. When working with text that like moves or has a kind of animation to it, what I find it that it has as a formal quality that distinguishes it from any kind of static representation of written language is the incorporation of time, and it's sort of um, uh, it sort of operates in a way like a video in a lot of ways. You can think about it, video in spaces as these sort of as loops essentially. I think when you're a video artist, when you're a time-based artist, and you're operating in a site-specific or in a place and in a place that is outside of a computer where there's no interface to begin or stop the video, you're sort of caught in this uh, in a loop. To put it in a way, you always have to use the loop system. And so with this text for this particular work, I was interested in creating and using this sort of like appearance of text that even though it occurs in the same order, you can't really predict the point of entry of the work. And so I began getting kind of a little bit interested in borrowing maybe some elements, like very abstractly borrowing visual elements of commercial signage that uses LEDs, and just sort of like abstracting it and massaging it into turning it into something that's more sort of it starts to stand out a little bit more as a conscious alteration of its aesthetics to form this object that it's instead of giving you any kind of practical information, it's like it's just rotating between words that form slowly, and without a particular explicit beginning or end either. It's sort of its meaning or intent also becomes a little bit ambiguous as well. And playing off of this idea of animated text too, one of the things that also happens with text that's animated or in a video format is that there's a kind of when reading. One of the things that's interesting when reading, and without trying to get too scientific about it or anything, but there is something kind of interesting about the ability to predict text based on like what you can see from the periphery of your eye. And so when you control the amount of information you present, you're sort of kind of creating a different kind of interaction with language that is maybe more difficult. And my desire is to kind of create writing pieces that have to be read with a difficulty of access to the information, or not just a difficulty, but a restricted access to information. And so by how I was doing it with this work was because the text itself is not moving, I overlapped the text on top of each other so that when one would appear, the other ones would become part of the noise of the other pixelated kind of like points to make up the text. So it's a six line poem that is sort of rotating between each line in that poem.
Well, I want to get into a little later after we see a few more examples of like the way you think about using text in your work as kind of a continuing theme in a lot of your video pieces. But it's also very interesting for me to hear you speak about that because I think people who, excuse me, are really into video installation think about that medium very differently than people who are making single channel work. Really, I think you have to really expand your understanding of what the medium of video is. And in one of the ways is what you just mentioned, how there is no beginning, middle, or end in that type of video. It's still like linear, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter because you can't control the way the viewer comes to it or when they leave it as well. The other part too is like in the last few years as like LED technology is really coming into prominence, everywhere. I kind of just think about LEDs as the same as video. There's not really a lot of difference. It's just that video has a grid of LEDs or lights that can be more sophisticated in how they glow to make meaning. So a little bit, I kind of think of that piece as a video installation, even though it's more maybe thought of more like a electronics piece or a microcircuit really. But to me, that's all video. Yeah, so let's take a look at one of your other pieces. So this is, I didn't meet you when I saw that piece, but I was curious about you. And then I'm trying to remember when we met, but I remember I loaned you a few media players and screens and stuff, and I was like, what's this guy gonna do with all this stuff? I can't wait to see it. When I saw a video of it, I was just blown away. Let's take a look at this next piece. It's called Continuous Script, and it's from about a year ago, I think, or so. Take a look. So wow. So yeah, there's no sound, so we can talk. And is this set up at the University of Guelph?
It is. It was particular. It's that was for the setup that I did for an end of semester critique. Yeah, it's in one of the galleries at the university.
And tell us just a little bit about like sort of the technology behind this. I'm sure a lot of viewers are curious about like how would you ever make this work on so many screens like this?
Yeah, it's a combination of a few things. There's like I'm really interested in that work in particular. There's just like a lot of very small details that contribute to its linearity as a text and a presentation of the speed text. That is very, I mean, it gets pretty technical, but you can think about it in terms of when you control the speed of a text moving from screen across the screen, you're not really thinking about speed so much. And it's like how you think about velocity and scrolling text is like a thing that I've like had to like wrap my head around, because it's not, you're not working with like meters per second. You're working, or kilometers, like kilometers per hour or anything like that. You're working with pixels per second or whatever, like whatever you want to think about it. And so if you have the same video on two screens that are different sizes, and it takes the letter A, I can probably show it here. It takes the letter A 5 seconds to make it from this edge to this edge. If you have a much bigger screen, it'll take the same amount of time. It'll take 5 seconds to make it from this edge to this edge, but a small screen and a big screen are covering completely different distances. So if you're displaying the same video in two different screens with different sizes, they're actually moving at a much different, the bigger one's moving at a much faster speed because it's traversing a much longer distance. So that's, there was a lot of considerations of exporting the videos, so the speed of the text would maintain a continuous continuous velocity across all the screens. Same with the sizes of the text in terms of it's how much space they take up in the screen as well, right? They all maintain the same height, and so like there's a lot of adjustments. It sounds complicated, but it's actually easy to figure out. What you just need to know the percentages of like how much bigger a screen is than the other, and you just adjust velocity and size accordingly.
Right. Yes, I remember when I was a student, way back when, one of my teachers was Lisa Steele, and she said this line I've never really forgotten, and it's sort of like video installation is about engaging the space between screens. And I've always kind of thought of this as sort of like not always the case, but an overarching definition of what video installation can be about. In this case, in your piece, there is no space between the screens, but I mean, it almost enhances that idea because, the viewer understands that, that they're not the same thing, but it's like a trick that you're doing visually with the viewer's perception of how to understand it. Can you talk a little bit about what is that text to you? What does that mean? What is it?
What is
Yeah.
what does it mean? Yeah, so the text is uses if I'm remembering correctly, it uses the words always, afraid. I'm writing it down as I say it because it helps me remember. Aghast. It has a repetition of the word all twice in one screen, and then a few instances of just the letter H, and a few instances of just the letter A. So I mean, there's a few things like the main idea that I had that I was concerned with here was to have the so sort of similarly in the way that I spoke about in the piece like with recurring sun. It's the sort of idea of borrowing a very small abstraction or a very abstracting a very small element of language from a particular kind of mass media, and sort of like abstracting it enough to like until kind of massaging it enough until it becomes something else. In this work, I was kind of interested in doing the same thing with the kind of like language that sort of like it exists in terms of like the representation of fear, like the sort of a mark of what's the word? Yeah. Kind of like a fetishization of violence and fear and sort of like how this becomes like a consumable sort of emotion, not just consumable emotion, but also just like something that it's like I'm talking about it so abstractly, but like to be honest, like I'm actually like I was thinking specifically. I sometimes tend to lean towards speaking about things kind of vaguely because I don't always like to encase things into like one particular thing. But like one of the things that I was thinking about is just sort of like how sort of representations of like how violence in political clashing is represented from Venezuela, from where I'm from. Like, but I don't try to like get too into that because I think that those representations of violence exist in other formats. But I kind of have a very like this idea of like distrusted media is like very old for most Venezuelans. Like the fake news, but we were dealing with that shit like way before Trump, and so because like Chavez rose to power in a very similar platform and whatever. I don't want to get politicized too much, but whatever. I think that, but it's an interesting sort of like discourse towards like what is represented in media, and so I was kind of just borrowing very lightly from those ideas and trying to present it in a format that would create a dizzying physical response to this language around these emotions, and doing it so in a way that it's also kind of like there's this sort of cheeky thing that happens where there's like a writing of basically of a long screen because there's a repetition of the letter A over and over and over again, and you have I've kind of placed the word aghast at the end of the word at the very right end of the screen setup to kind of allow for the letter H to be at the end of what would be a long utterance of a sound. There's some other technical considerations there in terms of like always afraid and aghast have the letter A in the same position, so that's what allows for like an easy seamless transition of the letter A across all the screens. But the letter changes, and like then it also becomes a difficult act of reading these words too, because then you're it's possible to kind of create other words out of like the different combinations of the different screens. But it was all based on this idea of exaggerating what's already kind of an exaggeration, I guess.
Let's take a look at your next piece, which, in my mind at least, is almost like a reverse of continuous script that we were just talking about, but also uses technology, obviously, and text. This one, each time I saw something new, it just blew my mind a little bit more. When I saw this one in your studio, I really, really couldn't believe it. Let's take a look at this piece from about 6 or 8 months ago called Reeler. So there it is. You can see it. It's a screen sliding back and forth with a motor on a plank, essentially, with a video playing. Yeah, this one, well, as I said before, definitely engages some space in the way that screen is moving, yet the text seems to more or less stay fixed, almost like the screen is like a window into this text. What it, how'd you come up with this one, Jose? Tell us a little bit about this piece called Reeler.
Yeah. So this piece, it was, I think it started with the idea of, I tend to work with text, with pieces mostly, like figuring out the platform first, and then figuring out the writing for it. It's harder for me to write anything for any of these pieces without knowing what the actual work is gonna do. It's difficult to know what kind of, because there's always a gap between what you think something's gonna do and what it actually does. I think actually there's something kind of interesting about that. But like anyway, so I'm saying all of this because I think because what I was thinking about with this work at the very beginning of the project was it would be interesting to have a screen that does exactly what you just described, a screen that moves from moves in a horizontal to the back and forth motion, and allow that while it does it's the text is animating at the same speed in an opposite direction to make it look as though it's sort of scanning the text slowly. And so that's how I sort of started prototyping the piece a little bit. And it was like the first thing I tried to figure out was literally just had like the screen on wheels and had a sensor that could check the movement of the wheel as it moved, and like as soon as I saw that it created an effect that I desired, and I was like, okay, good, now I can start making it a little bit more complex and trying to figure out how to add layers of complexity to it.
I would say there's definitely a lot of layers of complexity to accomplish something like that. You know, I'd say that's like brave to make something that honestly has so much potential to not work, because you know, it's like inventing something. I can't say I've ever really seen a piece quite like that with a screen that's like moving in a way like that. There's a lot of considerations to take into account as far as you know, like the cabling, the durability of it. But how would you say, how would you rate how much you make your pieces with sort of like a formula versus trial and error and tinkering? Or is to use it like 50% you kind of can predict it, and then 50% you kind of have to mess with it and try things? Or are you more methodical, or are you more just like a mad scientist inventor?
Um, I I wish I was more methodical than I come across as being. I think like I think maybe it comes. I think there's maybe the impression that there's a lot of like very careful considerations, and I think there are some very careful considerations, but it's also a lot of like I think trial and error, like you said. Um, I I would say that it's not necessarily like super experiment. It's tricky because like I find that even though like when I started that project took me like what? It took me like 6 months to put together. And so I mean, well, I was doing other stuff too, but y- like even I was like aiming for that object to like do that really like with a few variations that I wasn't able to achieve because of limitations in like how the motor works and whatever. Like I would say that like it doesn't feel like a super experimental because it's aiming for that, but at the same time I think one of the things that happens with media art work, and particularly with these kind of projects, is like the variations in the experimentation occur in the process of getting to that point of the final work. So there's like a ton of like invisible like decisions like any work really. But I think like there's even though like I'm not making like 16 different versions of it before it happens, there's like 16 different trial and error things. So I would actually tend to think of this work more less methodical and more experimental, because there's just as I'm assembling things, things are not working a certain way, or like sound with this work was something that I didn't even expect. Like when I first put it together, the thing was loud, and so I like added this whole other layer of things to bring into the writing as well. Um, I originally wanted the work to be a little bit more erratic in its movement, but that also just like added this whole other layer of engineering complexity that actually became a limitation. So that's why I feel that it's interesting when you're aiming for something and you can't quite reach it for whatever reason, then like the decisions that are made between the where you end up falling and where you actually are, it's sort of like where that sort of experimentation and that stuff happens. So anyway, this is a bit circuitous answer to saying like I think I just play around a lot.
Well, I think it's inevitable because this is uh, the way you're making these things. There's no, you can't just buy a kit off of Amazon to do this stuff. Like it's very, very complex. In some ways, I'd be extremely excited to curate it and show it, but I'd also be like terrified about the install and particularly the maintenance of works like this. Not that I don't trust your how the level that you can fabricate to or whatever. It's just inherent to the technology that it just may not do what the manual says all the time. Yeah. And then beyond that, just about 2 months ago or something, you let me know that you're setting up some things at boarding house right here in Guelph, and invited me in one evening as I was in the middle of a very complex video install at Art Gallery Guelph. Went by one night and made me feel better about what I was doing, because what I saw you doing was very complex. It's sort of a thing that I've always, for a long time, I've had this idea that artists should do it, and I can't really say I've seen it quite like this, or even more than one or two other examples of anything even remotely similar to it. But it makes a lot of sense to work with the technology. Let's take a look at this. This is a little clip I made with my phone in the boarding house. We'll just take a look at this piece. All right. So it may not be super obvious to our viewers, but what I'm doing is I'm panning my phone at the same rate as this projection is actually turning around the gallery. So you had one projector in the middle of the gallery on a motor that would turn. What is this piece about, Jose?
Yeah, that piece that's actually a work that I'm still working on a little bit on right now. It's kind of a pretty, formally speaking, a pretty like what to me seems like a pretty natural continuation to the previous work. This idea of the screen moving and the text sort of appearing to be static, in comparing so that there's like kind of scanning of a text as the projector moves. It's sort of revealing a piece of writing that slowly that becomes, in this case, actually also very difficult to read because of this idea that where there's only like I think 3 or 4 characters that you can see at a time. So like even reading any of the letters any of the words is actually pretty challenging. The work is about, I mean, to be honest, I'm still kind of figuring this one out a bit. This one's a bit on development right now. I think when I began working on that piece, I was also like I'm interested in 2 things that happens with the work. with that thing. But one of the things, but before I get into those things, like this is like one of the considerations that I couldn't have predicted, which was what it did in that space that I couldn't really have predicted, and how it adapted, how the projection adapted to the space as a boarding house gallery, kind of created incorporated an element that, even though I was kind of expecting it, I wasn't like totally expecting what this sort of tracing of the architecture would happen, that what this sort of tracing of the architecture would do to the space, and what kind of relationship with the viewer it would create spatially with the reader. This idea that, even for me, trying to read this piece while I was in the space, it was incredibly challenging. And right now, the writing is saying, "I promise, I think you're smart," which kind of, the language comes a little bit back from the previous piece, where the writing was also speaking with these the idea of a promise, or the idea of this is sort of like this presentation of a piece of text that's coming from a first person writer, first person view. In both of these works, I'm kind of interested in how this kind of writing, when it's presented in a space, I'm going to say this kind of writing, I mean specifically this sort of like first person point of view that's addressing a subject, addressing a reader. Specifically in second person, the premise, do you think it's smart? Like, there's a lot of layers of ambiguity that happens, and it's like when both subjects are removed, both the you and the I are ambiguous, and so creating a kind of level of uncertainty between reader and text, and by uncertainty I mean like uncertainty whether you're the one who's being addressed or if it's someone else, and who the I is in this relationship. I was sort of interested in kind of exploring that to create a kind of uncomfortable position, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me to talk to you about your use of text, because in honesty, it's something as a curator I sort of shy away from a lot of the time. It's just like my personal thing, but your stuff works for me well because it's in that very perfect middle ground, in that gray area, where you're sort of meeting the viewer halfway. As you said, it's like ambiguous enough, but there's enough to like grab onto at the same time. It's sort of like a puzzle, I suppose. And it's interesting too how it functions with the technology that you're using. Like it's combining the text with the very specific ways you're displaying it through video. To me, it's like more than the sum of its parts, and it's something that you want to spend time with, because it's you almost have to sort of like memorize what's going on, because you in, for example, the piece we just looked at, it's almost like invisible, right? Like it's only this glimpse of it as you're seeing it. You're trying to remember what was back here, and you're like, whatever, I'll see it go around again, and I'll try to get it. There's sort of an enigma, a puzzle that you challenge the viewer with to figure it out. Do you think of it as, like, in a sense, like poetry, or do you think of it more just like a functional part of the piece that's just like needed in it, or is it like poetry to you?
I would say poetry. I tend to like I that's why I was kind of consider the work that sort of like the platform before the text, so that I can write text for it that is sort of appropriate, or exploits its formal qualities. And I mean, I think like I tend to think of most art in terms of it having either sculptural components to it, or poetic components to it, to the way that it conveys meaning. And so I would say that, just to give you an answer, I would think of it more as poetry than something like it's just mechanical, or part of the sort of like more than just a thing that it needs to review to be with the work. I've always really enjoyed writing for my pieces for that reason. So I tend to think of it in more in poetic terms.
And let's just talk a little bit overall about your thoughts about video as a medium. It's something I'm really always interested in to figure out how people just think about video. It's such a major part of our lives now. It has been for a while. It's extremely powerful, I think, as a tool to use. And I really I love it and I hate it at the same time. Like I work with it every day and whatnot, but I also am very cautious about it as it's like a thing that's, has maybe too much power in a way, and also is, here at a Media Arts Center when I write a grant, like I don't talk about this, but the reality is it's can be kind of evil. It's addictive. Like no one, my daughter Edie is normally here. Like she loves to watch videos, and we kind of limit that a little bit, or quite a lot actually. And that's not an unusual thing for a child or an adult to feel like that. It might be like you're having a tough day, and the promise is at the end of the day you can watch video, right? Like no one's like, oh, I can't wait to like look at printmaking at the end of the day, or I'm gonna just zone out and look at like marble sculptures. Like very few people think that, but video is like a different thing because it can really lead the viewer's mind. Like you obviously have a different way of thinking about video than filmmakers or most other media artists. Like, how do you approach this medium, and how do you, I suppose, like, want to harness it or control it or affect the viewer using video or video installation?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that I think video does have a kind of ubiquity to it that I think it's necessary for me to consider and grapple with. It's ubiquitous presence and not just how we interact with it as a means of consuming just like something that was made for video, but also just how it's used as how it's just sort of even just architecturally integrated to our spaces. In forms of signage or forms of different displays of information or different interfaces. I enjoy its ubiquity. I think it's in this. I think about video. It's in its way like its invisibility in a way how it can sort of become like invisibility as in like a given of something that is part of like nobody questions what a video is anymore. And I think like maybe one of the things that video art maybe used to have before for it was its sort of newness. And I think that as like maybe that's a debatable argument. Maybe that's not so solid. But I do think that when we work with video now, we have to we don't have sorry, I'm like making this as like very like big arguments. We have to do this or anything. But I think like I personally consider a lot its spatial context as well, like whether it's like something that is handheld or interacted with at eye level or above eye level, or in a screen, or whether you see it in a like, or whether you can see it like while you're laying in bed, or you have to see it in the living room, or you have to see it out the door, so you have to go to the cinema. Like all these different considerations, I think are part of like things that are for me inform kind of connection between video and sculpture. That seems pretty natural for me, because it's so as an interface, it's this sort of two-dimensional interface that we time-based dimensional interface that it's so well integrated into our lives that we create a kind of intuitive reading of the object. And intuitive readings of things are interesting because they can be broken. It's like a language. You can kind of like break that language or the interpretation of the language slowly, or erode it in a way that it starts to operate outside of the norm. And I think that's where I'm interested that's I'm interested in that moment of like, oh, I'm expecting this to perform in a particular kind of way, but there's something about it that's like broken enough that it maybe just like catches your attention. And then you use it. That's my interest is like when you're able to break the attention, not to break the attention, but to like bring attention to the object itself. Then it's like you have someone's in, attention for like maybe 15 more seconds, and you get have all the rest, and that seems like pretty good real estate. To have 15 seconds of someone's time is like a lot.
Uh,
So
yeah,
I just,
15 seconds is a lifetime compared
yeah.
to a lot of pieces of art, depending on the context or whatnot. I mean, I appreciate how you talk about it. It's like people have an intuition for video, and I think that's really the basis of its strength. Sometimes I think of it as a universal primary language of the world. And maybe 30, 20, 30, 40 years ago, that wasn't true in some parts of the world. But now it's like even in very remote or impoverished places, people still sort of do have video and access to it and whatnot. And I think that it is a communication tool beyond language. That's also why I've been asking you about use of language in it, that it's something that people just get, you know. And so I sometimes challenge young or some people, and like, you know, not too many people watch television anymore, but if you do, when you're flipping channels, you can tell within a few frames of what you're looking at. You can tell if it's a soap opera or the news or some movie from the 80s or you know, a sitcom or whatever. It's just these subtle little cues that people just know. They just feel it. They're absolute experts in deciphering it, which makes it really exciting, but also like very challenging as well to control it. You know, to get to make sure you have enough control of all the aspects of it that you can create the effect that you want to. So what for you, Jose? Like what, you know, everyone's kind of in limbo right now, trying to figure it out. You're not here in Guelph at your classes on campus at U of G, you know, but what are you kind of thinking about? What are you working towards? What are you hopeful for?
Um, I'm working towards finishing this piece. This workshop is gonna be kind of interesting because I'm gonna make it specifically for my living room, for my parents' living room, which is where I'm located in right now. I'm hoping to kind of make work that's maybe a little bit specific to the space that I'm in right now, in terms of like how the projections and the screens are gonna work. I wanted to say something just before I keep talking about myself. Have you ever seen that work by? You must have seen this. Stan Douglas's television spots and melodramas. I think it's called. It's like two sets of different pieces, different works. They were both made for TV, and I believe a set of those works were made for the 30-second commercial slots. Do you ever see?
Yes, I vaguely remember this. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I kind of remember seeing this maybe as a student or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I love those pieces, and it just when you were talking, I was thinking about those pieces because I was thinking, I was like, when I thought about artists that kind of like interrupted the way that we expected things to function, I think like Stan Douglas was pretty successful at that. Not to say that he was the only one, but it's like it was just an example of that stuck with me. It was like, oh, this is like so specific to the medium of television. And I think a lot of people are also looking with like cable access TV to do that stuff, but like the fact that he was working with something that was like in a commercial slot is mind blowing because like it's so um like it just begins operating in such a different tempo from the ring of everything else that was like it created parentheses and just sort of like what was otherwise kind of like a very uniform stream of content. But anyway, so about me, I don't know. I'm gonna try to finish this thing. I gotta work on my thesis. It's funny. It's like hard right now to plan anything. I was originally living in Toronto before I came to Guelph, and going back to Toronto now it seems like a really bad idea. So because of density and people and COVID. And so I'm trying to take it day by day. I mean, right now, you know, trying to make work for this context as best as I can. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we can all do it. We can, especially if we're in a place of privilege to not be out, like sort of as an essential service each day.
Yeah.
Trying to keep things going. I mean, I'm kind of torn about doing things like this, but I don't want to be flippant about like talking about art and whatnot, as in some ways it doesn't seem to. Be as essential. But at the same time, I feel like everyone can respond to what's going on how they wish, and everyone can still try to contribute. And using this video technology and the internet, we can still have conversations like this. And if some people like it, that's fantastic. And if other people aren't in a mindset to think about ideas, that's very, very understandable right now too. So Jose, thank you very, very much for joining us today and allowing me to show some examples of your work and telling us about it. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with in your living room, and to see how you keep progressing your practice, which I've seen major leaps and bounds in just in the year and a half that I've known you. And hopefully, as I said, I'd be terrified to curate your work, but I'd love to do that someday when it's possible and the situation allows it again. So thanks.
Yeah, like that reeler piece when it showed in Halifax was like a lot of learning. Like now it's gonna come back stronger.
For sure. Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, take care, Jose. It was nice to chat, and be safe, and we'll talk to you sometime soon, okay?
Thank you. Chat soon.
Thanks. All right, we just spoke with José Andrés Mora, joining us from his living room in Hamilton, Ontario, and that was a great chat. I hope people really liked it and enjoyed seeing his work as much as I did the first times that I saw it, and it's great to hear a little bit more about what he's up to. A few little things I want to mention. Hopefully Edie's back tomorrow, gets her homework done, and is back with us here live on Ed Video's Open Circuit. Either tomorrow or Monday, we'll have her doing live video mixing in the background. I'm very excited for that. And a few other things to note. Today was supposed to be the day that Kazoo Fest started here in Guelph, something I'm involved in for almost about 10 years now as the what's my title? It's something like the Visual and Media Art Curator. We had all kinds of things set up for today, to start today. Unfortunately, like everything else, it's been postponed, but it is the great desire of the Kazoo crew, who are the most wonderful people, to have the festival this October. So that was announced this morning, October 15th to 19th, I believe. So fingers crossed that the world goes back to normal enough to allow in real life meetings again, concerts and art exchanges in person. We're hoping to basically still present the festival as it was planned in the fall. So thanks very much to the Kazoo crew for hanging in there, not giving up, and trying new things. Another thing today is today the Images Festival is launching its online programming. I believe I saw this morning that they're starting out with one of the main featured artists, who is Scawanetti from Montreal. Ed Video has been working a lot in the last year with Elephant Gallery, the gallery in downtown Montreal that represents Scawanetti. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, we closed down a show, or I was forced to be closed down here in Guelph, featuring Scawanetti's video and 2D work, photography and digital prints at Renan Isaac's Contemporary Art. So if you're looking for more media art online, check out Images Festival's online offerings. One other thing I meant to mention yesterday is major congratulations to all of the winners of the Sobeys Art Award. It's an exciting change in format for all of the I think there's 25 long-listed winners to all be declared this year's winner. And potentially more importantly is that all of them get $25,000. So I thought that was a really exciting change to this prize. In particular, congratulations to all of them, but to two of the artists that I know well and work with. The first is Guelph's own Jagdeep Reina, who's in here all the time. Doing different things, helping out the center, has been for years, and extremely talented at drawing, bit of painting, and lately embroidery. Major and just before all this coronavirus nonsense started, we were working together to do. So Jag could figure out how to do animations as well. So congratulations to Jag. Really proud of you, buddy, and miss you. And I owe you a phone call. I'll call you. And the other artist is Sabrina Ratte, one of my favorite artists, incredible media artist. Sabrina's video work was also in the show recently at Elephant Gallery in partnership with her Montreal gallery, Elephant. So congratulations, Sabrina. Really happy for you, and super, super well deserved. So I think that's it for today. Hopefully Edie's back, and tomorrow we have a great program. I'm gonna get it all prepped up tonight. We have a fantastic media artist, Ivana Dizdar, joining us, and some incredible videos that she's made. Is checking some, rewatching some of them this morning, and I got really excited for tomorrow's show because her stuff is just hilarious. I worked with her a few times, and I have a great amount of respect for the tone and the style and the messages in her videos. They're very funny, and I'm very excited to talk to her about how she comes up with these ideas for the characters she plays, how she creates these videos, and what they mean to her, really. So I think that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Every weekday, 2 p.m. Because Edie's not here and normally plays the keyboard out music, I'm just gonna cut it to some of Nick Dembour's Smearballs' newest album, track number 2. It's called Flustercuck. And let's take a listen at our end credits. Thanks to Jose, our guest today, and to everyone at Ed Video and Ed Video's funders. We'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. on Ed Video Guelph YouTube channel. Take care, everyone, and have fun, too. Don't forget to have fun, everybody. That's an important part of life as well.